the past one. Yeah, so I'll do some of that, and at the same time I'll show you some of the other tools that we've done, and then we can go back to typing. Okay, so this is in the e-texts folder in the first page there of the tools. If you go back to the tools, there should be this manuscript e-text. That's the first one. This is a listing of all of the manuscripts we had in the project so far. Not all of them have anything. Many of them are empty. I haven't typed in all of them, but they're just files, just like the ones you have for all the manuscripts. One of the postdoctoral fellow there, Charles Lee, he's built a viewer that helps us see the manuscripts. It's actually quite brilliant. So I'll show you how this works. Whose manuscript shall we choose? You can't choose the things you typed in, but maybe we can. Which one? KTM? Yeah. OIV. We can choose this. Well, let's choose ones that I'll just choose one. The ones I've typed in a bit more. We can see. So if you go into the viewer of this file, then it'll take some time because of this.
It looks very small, right?
Yeah, but the it's just there's a lot of, I don't know why it's the net is the main issue here. Maybe I can switch back to my Geo बंद पडला restart केला.
Restart continuity of Jungle Datta ASKG 8064. There's only 3 KB. That is open.
No, that's empty.
3 KB.
3 KB means there's nothing in it.
I forgot.
No, look at this again. It should now. Okay, so what happens in the viewer? If you can see, I hope you can see. I'll try to make it as big as possible. So the header, you can see, is now being translated into this nice looking information page at the start. Right? It gives you the title, the author, the short form number, then the details of the manuscript, dating, and so on. Some notes that I've put in, right? This fellow, the buzz written as was written as buzz.
Yeah, that's very important.
Yeah. Yeah, so instead of coding it exactly the same every time, I just write a note at the beginning saying was can be was and was can be was, and then when I'm transcribing, I'll transcribe it as it should be. So that way, otherwise there'd be so many errors that would pop up that are not necessary. So you can do that. In the header, there's a spot for notes. Basically, you just keep typing in notes.
It's very exact, right?
Nee, this is I need to talk to Charles about this. Some of them have the colophon, which has an exact date.
Right.
If you just put in 19th century, it puts the very end of the 19th century. I think it should be the very beginning of the 19th century. So that it seems a little bit older. Because probably wasn't this late. 1900 is very late for manuscript. Okay, so, and in fact I think it's older actually. 578 is quite an old manuscript. So there's a few things. One, right now you see that it's in the folio form, right? Each line is exactly the same line as the folio. It should be, oh I guess he's turned off. There's a way to make it larger and so on, but it's been turned off. Right now, let's see if we can find, so anything that's been deleted, if you can see right here, it's strike through. Anything that's added is then in red afterwards. So here, Asthana Bhu Mi became Asthana Bhu Mo. Right? At the Sabha. So you can turn these off and on. So you can, if you don't want to see the deletion, you click off the show deleted, and so now it only shows the additions. If for some reason you don't want to see the additions, you can turn that off as well, and then you see nothing. can turn the deleted back on and you see the PC, basically, before correction. Right? So this is what, remember we were talking AC, PC. This is you can switch between AC and PC. If you, some of these, the page breaks and so on are here, not to say. You can switch, skip to any folio you wish through this. You can also, if you don't want to read it folio by folio, you can switch to running text.
But I think this will be very useful for you if you want to do the image alignment.
Yes. Yeah.
Put on the OCR and track it.
Yeah.
Very useful.
You can also then switch to running text if you actually just want to read it. Right. So then what he's done is have the verses in this larger font. Right. So wherever you've marked the div verse, right, they're now laid out. I still want him to actually lay it out as a verse. Right now you see it's, you don't get the pada breaks for the verse. I think you should be able to. But right now he just has it like the running text, but in a bigger font. This would be pretty useful, I think, for those who have texts that have commentary and verse and commentary. It'll automatically sort of lay it out. So that's the viewer. Here also you can then control, do you want to see the page breaks or do you want to see the line breaks and so on, the page breaks. You may not be able to find the page break. Yeah, you see here that it gives the folio number in a little superscript.
Yeah.
Line breaks show up as L's. Like here's one line break. These red L you see. Now the cool thing about this, which is why I've hired him as a postdoc, is that he has a really easy lippy change. So this changes immediately to Devanagari. Right. Or if anyone can read Malayalam, it changes to Malayalam. Or if you change, you can immediately change to Telugu. Right? And this is possible to do with any other index script because you just create mappings. It's been done. Some fellows working on it, they just released it.
There are sometimes there are problems
Exactly.
with clusters.
So clusters, I think for the most part, we're okay with.
I see.
Yeah, we'd have to test it, but
Yeah,
you have to find enough texts. And here also it handles the deletions in the lipi. This is why, remember we had to do this special subst to wrap around the text. This is, if you don't do that, it can break when you're switching between this IAST and Devanagari. So that's the viewer, and immediately you can view things. So in fact, let's see if so yesterday I had typed in that story 21, right? Immediately you can just dump in you can try this onto the file that you're typing in now, in fact. It should be able to work. So yesterday I'd done that, there it is, right? The header is there. This is the text, right? Namas Chandrahavatam Saya, and so on. This is, I just typed that file yesterday. And I can switch to Devanagari. Here, this is the width controls here. So, it's bigger. Yeah, so you can see here also, it's all there. This one I don't have any add or delete because it's a printed text, so I can't show you the add or delete, but you can also view it as the running text and it gives these are all of the verses, and then it switches back to those Vachanamaka. Right, so this is the viewer that's been designed by this fellow Charles Lee. There's some other. These are these verse lists online. The other tools I wanted to show you. We can go back to. Tools. So we've seen the texts, verses is not terribly useful for you. So now let's think about this next stage, right? So imagine you've typed in your text fully, right? All 15, 16 of you have all typed in story 21. Now you want to bring them all together. They're all different files, right? So you upload them here, and then you can create this collision chart that we've done, where, let me take a previous text. So you can select which manuscripts you want to use. I'll just, for now, choose this Vallabha Southern collection. I think those are all the right ones, yeah. And let's take story number 2. Story 2. And remember I had said I'd also created scene divs. Within each story, you can choose just a particular scene that you're interested in. So it pops up all of the scenes that it has for story 2 here. Maybe you can see.
And what is the purpose of 2.0? So
these are the numbers of the scenes. So each scene has a unique identity.
these are different scenes.
So scene 1 or scene 0 is the opening, like the Asti, whatever, Nagaram, and so on. Right? Scene 1 is the first incident of the story. Right? 3 suitors proposed to Brahman's daughter. Remember I told you the story yesterday. The Sanjeevani Vidya Pustakam Lagati. Right? So then the Brahman's daughter dies with the snake bite. Then the 3 suitors go their separate ways. One of them visits Brahman, who throws baby into fire. Then the Brahmin magically revives the baby. And then suitor steals magic, revives girl. Right? So I've created all of these scenes. Then we can choose one of the scenes to collate. Let's say maybe we choose the...
so these are the subdivisions of a bigger listing, right?
Of one story.
One story.
Yeah. So some of the stories have like 15, 16 scenes. Some of them only have 2 or 3.
Is there any pattern in the arrangement of the construction of those scenes?
I've made the, just when I feel like, oh, this should be a good scene. Because there's no, it has no bearing.
Textual pattern.
Yeah. The only pattern is that I always give the colophon a scene. I always give the riddle one scene and the opening one scene. So those are 3 set. So then one can compare across the whole text. But the others are arbitrary. I just decide, okay, I think this would make a nice chunk of text to compare. So we can compare. So let's see how she dies by a snake bite. Then we analyze. So there's a couple of options in this tool. One is you can either have the manuscripts as each row of the, you've all seen what a spreadsheet looks like, Excel. So the rows are either one manuscript or the manuscripts can be columns. I always choose rows because it's easier to read across the text. So I always choose manuscript as row. And then the verses, the ones that you've tagged, you can either have it write out the whole verse, or you can have it collapse it into just the tag of the verse to make it a shorter. This is for the sake of when you're doing the genetic analysis. If you want to restrict some of your analysis, it's a nice way to do it. So then you press analyze, and I hope this works. You notice it dumped down a CSV file right here. Now what I'll do is pull the CSV back into Google Sheets. Give me 1 second to put it back into the drive. There we go. Oh my God. And so once we get So I'm just going to move this file back into the Google Drive. In fact, I think I will put it where you can all play with it. So if you're able to go back into that folder that I had shared with you, the workshop folder, you'll now be able to see the CSV file, the collation 44 is what it's called. If you're able to see it, you can open it. It should ask you to be able to open it in Google Sheets. If you see open with Google Sheets on top, you can open it with Google Sheets, so it's easier to look at. You can go ahead and do that if you want. You can see it on your own laptop. And then you'll see what has it done? It has tried to align all of the reading of the text. Let me make it clear. Right, so every so you can see now it thinks, etasmin, right? It's aligned up all of the appropriate words. Now we would want to say what? Etadantare is actually a variant of etasmin, I might say, right? That there was a reading etasmin and he decided to change it to etadantare, because everything else is the same, right? Sa, sarpa, drashta. It's not that there's a different word. I would argue that this should be here, right? And so we can do that quite easily. Just cut and paste. Right? So this is what I mean by aligning the collation. Right? You'll see that things can be synthesized, and so now we have what I was mentioning before, the type 2 variation. Actually, no, this isn't quite. It's only one.
So if you don't want to align it, you can keep it as it is, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
If you think that it is not there.
If you think that it should, so what you're saying when you're putting it into the same column is that they all descended from the same original text, right? So if you were arguing, so what I did right now is that I argued that there was one original reading, probably etasmin, and this scribe either intentionally or accidentally turned it into etadantare, right, instead of etasmin. Or what? It was originally etasmin, and then the ancestor to all of these four turned it into. Sorry, it was originally etadantare, and the ancestor of these four turned it into etasmin. Right? Either possibility is valid. Right? But both of those arguments are made when I move it here. If I didn't, right? If I keep it here, what am I saying? There were originally two different readings. Right? There wasn't a single reading. And possibly there were both. Right? Possibly it was etadantare, etasmin antare. Right? Because this isn't just etasmin, it's etasmin antare. Right? So there's a number of options you can do. You can also do something like this, where you take this cell, you put it inside of here, right? Combining the two cells, and then you align it with that. Saying etadantare is cognate with etasmin antare, which is probably the better way to do it.
Sure, because this manuscript BM is omitting rather antare, right?
It's turning it into a compound.
Yeah, it's turning it into a compound.
Yeah. Etadantare is etasmin antare, but just in a compound, samas. So in fact, this would be a better rendering than what I'd first done. Does this make sense? So this is the second phase of the work. Right? The first phase is type. Right? Second phase is take this, create a collation, and then start aligning, massaging. The CTE, the other approaches do both at the same time. Right? So CTE, what you do is you take one text and you start putting in other texts based off of that vulgate.
Right.
So there's no actually separate files in other programs. It's all one file, and it's all basically one big disk. Right? In that approach, you wouldn't have these separate files. You would just, if you wanted a new manuscript, you put it down here and you start typing where you think each word goes. Maybe that's easier, but for some reason I like the idea that you can look at each manuscript independently and you can have different people working on each manuscript, you know, in a kind of cloud, you know, sort of formation, rather than all of it being in one file. Everything is in one place. Does it make sense? This is the collation, and so you can go through, right? And you can see actually, right? It's quite clear that this must have come. These 5 manuscripts are very closely related to.
Now I can see the second row, Ori 154. I see that it is dissolving compounds as a pattern. Sarpena Dashta, right?
Sarpena Dashta instead of Sarpa Dashta.
Everybody else is saying Sarpa Dashta.
That's right.
I mean that the first row is saying the compounded word Etadantare. But the remaining below ones, they are not following it at that juncture. But in this, they are following it.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not just one reading, but also 2 separate readings with a similar pattern that can also help find the relation.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And so what would happen actually is you would be able to, since now what would happen, so let's do this. Unfortunately there's no fast way to do this, but we can just do this one at a time. But I can show you what I'm trying to do here. So then I can move these here. Right, so now I've combined all of these. These are empty reading. There's no, the manuscript is missing. It only starts with later stories. Story 12 or something. So these manuscripts are actually just remove them. So we only have these 5 manuscripts. These are now one lemma. Remember we were talking about one lemma, 2 lemmas, etc., etc. We've now taken 2 lemmas and made it into one lemma. And so then if we were to go into our phylogenetic process, it would see these as being identical. Right? Actually, yeah. The way that we process this, actually, it normalizes all 4 of these as being identical. The anuswaras get normalized. So like this is etasmin nantare with 2 nas. It just gets normalized. See, this is etasmin nantare with anuswara and na. So the na and the anuswara would get treated as the same in the process. So so do you see this is the kind of idea of the next phase is you go through and you normalize.
So, but for accessing these tools, is needing one name of password?
Yeah, UBC Sanskrit. Sorry?
You give one link for these tools.
Yeah.
But these links is not possible to open without.
Yeah, so the username is UBC Sanskrit. You can type it in.
UBC Sanskrit?
Yeah. That's the username.
I don't know.
He is telling.
He's telling the name?
Username and password.
So so this phase of the work would involve aligning everything so that we can make stronger arguments about what is original and what is derivative. The one thing we still haven't had a good way to solve yet is this problem. What do you see here between G and K? What has happened? You can see G and K. You read the manuscript. So you have Sa, Sarpa Dash, Sarpena Dashta, Mandaki Abu. Right? Yeah. This has been transposed, right? So, and this is very common in prose to have one, this word order is changed. Now, how does one treat that? Does one treat that as a major error, or does one treat it as the same reading? Right? That's a tricky situation.
Sorry, from English point of view, it becomes predicative. Sarpadashta becomes predicative, which is wrong.
Yeah.
Mandakini should be the predicate, right?
That's right.
Sarpadashta, she became Mandakini.
Huh.
Something like that.
Yeah, exactly. But the problem is that in Sanskrit this is fine.
Yeah. So, Samandakini, Sarpadashta, Abhu.
Yeah. Right, it's fine to do it this way, and it doesn't mean that this manuscript is deviating. I mean, now in this particular case, it is actually deviating because their readings are no, actually, what's happened is Abhut is here, and Sarpadashta is over there, and he's combined, and Sandhi has brought it as a single lemma. Right, so there's still, we don't know what to do actually with this. Right now we're just treating it as different lemma. And that only this manuscript, only this SBBK manuscript has this lemma. That's the only way that we can treat it. Even though that lemma is actually identical to G plus J. Right? But right now we can't say that. We have no, we don't know what to do. It's still a problem. We don't know what to do with it.
So GHI has to be treated as one lemma.
But then it's a massive, it's a massive lemma.
Yeah. So CT will give this as a separate lemma. It will enlist all these words as separate lemmas. Along with it will also give this GHIG as one lemma.
As an additional,
As an
super
additional.
lemma.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
gotcha.
May not be super, in the same line,
Huh.
following all these four. It will give it as a separate lemma, and you can provide this as a reading only happening in
Of
one
that
lemma.
lemma. That's not a bad. I wonder if that's, that might be doable
Because
also.
this situation will occur.
All the time.
Yeah.
No, no.
It will increase the complexity and difficulty.
Exactly. And that is one of the outstanding sort of problems of the project. Yeah. So once you're done with this, let me show you then the next step, which I can only show it to you. I think it'll be a long time to try to unpack what's happening. But what we do with this collation, if I save it, I guess it automatically saves. Then if I go to now, so another tool that's been designed by my student is it takes that CSV spreadsheet which you just saw, and it'll turn it into what's called a NEX file. The NEX file is a genetic software readable file. So you can choose, I'll choose this file now, which is now workshop, this collation 44. This is the old file, but I'll just keep it that way. It's not the one we just changed. So we can drop it into there. There's a option here that you can select only certain types of variants that give you solid information about the history of it. But since we haven't completely massaged aligned the chart, I don't know if it'll do anything. So we'll just keep it as it is. Now we'll then dump a NEX file onto my laptop. Now I go to that program which you may or may not have downloaded called PAUP star. And this is a program that analyzes genetic materials and gives you a tree of evolution. And you can try. I haven't tried with this. It's a live demo to see if this PAUP, this NEX file will work.
Then why do you call it NEX?
NEX? What is that? I don't know.
Is there
You know? You should know.
It's a computational.
It's just the ending of the file, NEX, .NEX.
Oh, okay.
It stands for something.
Okay.
Nexus is the format, NEXUS. Yeah. But I don't know why Nexus. So it's collation10.nex. Open. Successful. So now it's processed the file. I'll execute the file. Okay, and then now I can, so there's a whole bunch of settings of parsimony and so on.
Yeah.
It's a very technical program. It'll take a long time to understand. Yeah, but I think my default settings are what we need. So I'll generate trees. So now it's going to go through that data, the set that we saw, and create variant trees of evolution that account for how each lemma got to where it is. It will be pretty fast, I think, because it's pretty small. Wait a second. No, I don't need to do that. Wrong one. I need to do heuristic search. Trees. Okay, now it's searching. It's done. Right? It found one tree that it likes. So it's probably not a very good set, but we can see what it thinks is the set. So then we can have it. You can have it show the tree. Sorry, I'll have it show it on print view trees. So now it's created a tree. I don't know if you can see from there, all the way in the back, but it's created a tree. These three, of course, are empty. Remember, we had deleted those 3 manuscripts that had no readings. So you can ignore that. It thinks that YE9054 and BORI154 are the closest relatives to one another. And then YE9055 is a very close cousin to those two. And then it thinks that these two are basically further away. Right? So with 5 manuscripts, there's only so much you can show you for us.
Which are the ones which are using the compound, and which is the one which is using
good point. We can see now. Right?
So you saved this file, right? The one that
I did. No, I have to reconvert this into CSV. I just used the original.
Okay.
Yeah, but it would have still have come up with a similar.
But this is what you do, right? From this file.
Yeah. Yeah, I would use this file, but yeah. So see, this one it had seen as the furthest away. Eula D is the furthest away, right? These other 4, this SBPK it sees as being further away from the other 3. So if we look at SBPK, remember this is the one that did what? Sarpadashta Abhut, right?
Yeah.
So it does seem to kind of at least hold at least the first 5 or 6 lemma.
Yeah, it is able to explain these variations.
Yeah, so exactly right. We'd be able to see explain how the variations happen based on the tree. So if that makes sense, that's basically the second phase of what we're doing, is aligning everything into its collations and then turning it into trees, which will then help. Not only would it help the next phase, which is the editing phase, right? But it also helps the first phase. Because if I'm typing it in, what do I know? If I do YE9055, I'm going to create a scratch file out of YE9055 and use it to type in YE9054 and use that one to type in BORI154, because then I just have to make fewer and fewer modifications. I don't have to rewrite an entire text. So it speeds up that side of the work, knowing which ones are related to which. Does it make sense? So this is the basic idea of the.
You did not again categorize or tag those variations as, say, most significant or less significant.
You can actually, and that would refine the process. Yeah, and that was one of the things where this type 2 variants are more significant than other types of variants. So if it can just boil down your set into those, then the idea is that the resulting tree you get will be more, you have more confidence in it. The program actually also gives you, let me close this. The program also it gives you the confidence index, what's called the CI score for the tree. Parsimony, confidence, it gives you all kinds of indices. So I can show you what our, let's see what our confidence rating is. So our tree, our confidence index is 0.882, 88% confidence is not bad. Yeah, not great, but not bad. You want it in the 90s if you're really fucked up. Yeah. Yeah. So that's the kind of phylogenetic data side of things.
Yeah, but if you're using parsing here, can we see what happens with the likelihood is?
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't done much with likelihood of PAUP, but I can show you this other program called NeighborNet. Well, it's called splits tree, but it uses this other way of calculating things called NeighborNet, and that we should also be able to use the same file.
But it's a very good idea to base it on likelihood also.
Not be able to use the same file. Yeah, let me try this. Like, I haven't tried much with likelihood with PAUP, but it's okay. That's a good score, 99.12.
Almost
likelihood. But likelihood is an easier, I think it has a less, it has a bigger margin for there. So you can see the tree. Yeah, so in that one, the problem is there are these 3 empty manuscripts. I would need to take those out.
It's kind of categorized as almost all of them into one.
That's because of those 3 empty. Yeah, it's messing up with there. I can take those out of the data. It's easy to take them out. Likelihood search. Better score. Tree, yeah. So here it's different actually. It sees the SBPK closer than others. But somehow, for some reason, the PAP, I think that one should stick with parsimony for that. There's other one, there's the NeighborNet. I don't know.
Oh, but that's very fascinating. Challenging.
Yeah. Yeah, see, here we get the same tree as the first time. Although one difference has happened. Right? When I've taken out those 3 empty manuscripts now, you see that what's it done? It likes D to be closer with SBPK as a different subfamily. So, and I think that's actually true. It has closer readings. Yeah, so that's that. Let me just show you then, and then we can talk and have more discussion and more practice if you want with the thing. So what does one do after you've collated, right? After you've gotten to the stage of this, right? This is still not an addition, right? It's still not any. You can't do anything to it. The next phase is more or less still under progress. We haven't designed anything, but I've just designed a kind of what I imagine something to look like here within Google Sheets again, my favorite program. So. The World Sanskrit Conference happened because of Google Sheets. everything was talking to each other. So here's what. So we started with a raw collation, and then I went through and did the alignment that we were just doing with. And so on. I did an alignment. This is the 4th scene of that same story. I don't know what's happening in this story, but it's the 4th scene of the story. So this is with all of the manuscripts that we are editing for the project. So it's a bigger data sheet, and I've gone through that. Now, what I've been able to do with the PAUP is to think of it as having 3 different branches. Right? And I've labeled them. One is Vallabha main, One is the older manuscripts, and one is the Vallabha Sabe. And if you remember, this comes about because of this attribution that it was by some fellow named Vallabha Dasa. This came up in the discussion yesterday, but actually there's no Vallabha Dasa. Kayastha Vallabha Shivadasa. So that's the situation. Now, this is, I haven't finalized the way that the nodes would look, but if you imagine in the handout, if one imagines a tree like this, right? What you can do is, this is a tree I've shown with 2 branches. Imagine the same tree with a 3rd branch. And imagine the same relationship, that each branch originates from a single node, A, B, or C. Okay? And down below, I've decided to ignore, I think, no, I haven't. I haven't decided to ignore the sub nodes, some of them, but I've gone one level deeper so far in this kind of mock-up of what things would look like. And so what basically I've done is linked that page, that collation, to an imagined series of subnodes. So imagine A is this branch 1. Right? And in branch 1, let's imagine that there are 5 different subnodes. I've shown you A sub 1, A sub 2, and A sub 3. Imagine there's A sub 4, A sub 5. Right? And then this is all imaginary. This is not a final thing. I just did it to show you what I would think it would work like. So within each node, you would have the sub-manuscripts that belong to each node. And up above, the system would automatically create some kind of best guess as to what the reading would have been at the A sub 1, A sub 2. Now, how does it do that? Right now, I'm doing it by a crude method of popularity. Right? It just figures out, so here it's figured out that well, it's 2 Akasmins and 2 Kasmins, and it just says that, I'm going to go with the first one, Akasmin. Here we have 3 Brahmanekasyas and 1 Brahmanakasya, another Brahmanasya. And it says that I'm going to select Brahmanikasya.
Is it just random you're saying, right?
Not random, it's a formula that says which is the majority. What's the most popular reading?
Problem in Kasmin. Because Kasmin,
yeah.
That seems to be correct, right?
Yeah, exactly. So let's, you're absolutely right. So I look at this and I say, you know what, this is not correct. Kasminschit is the correct reading. So what do? I type it in at this point. I can say Kasminschit is my reading here. And now what it's going to do is it's going to keep that reading there in the rest of the set. So it won't affect the readings below. Right? The readings of each of the manuscripts remain constant. Right? But if you go up above, so down at the bottom of this page, what I've done is created a kind of imagine the next node up. So the next node up would be what I called here branch 1. Here it would be your capital A.
Yeah.
So at that capital A, in that column, this one, no? This was the column that I changed. Kasmin's, I just changed this one, right? Yeah. So this 1A is now down here. It's Kasmin's now, right? I changed it. It still thinks that the best reading, because if you looked at the other 4 or 5, they all have Kasya, Kasyachit. Yeah. So it likes still Kasyachit as the popular reading. I might insist, no, these 2 were not the original. Kasmin is the original, and I can change it here as well. So that's the idea. So but the idea would be what? When you're editing, you're working up from manuscripts that you know are closely related to each other first. And then you're considering, okay, these are further away from those. And so you're preserving some kind of understanding or a story of how one word may have changed as it descended. Yeah? And then I've also then created this treetop where you can see where did our branch go? This one is, so this was our Gusmin, so in branch 1, remember this is the one we had changed. In this one it has Gusya is the reading in branch 1, in branch 2 and 3 it's Gusmins. So I might in fact want to say that that branch ought to be Gusmins. As the older reading and then later, or maybe this is right, maybe this 1A has restored the older reading. It got contaminated also, this could be a contamination in our. So that's the idea of the next stage, and this would be done in a much more, of course, not just a spreadsheet, it would be done with some kind of app that would allow you to select these. I'll just show you what the visual is just finished now.
So in this case, just 1 second. In this case, this Kasichet is actually semantically linked to the grammar here, right? No, Victor here, sir.
Yeah. Yeah, Kasmishit Nagare Brahmanas.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Kasichet is Victor Grihe, the next one is Victor Grihe. And this will be a grammatical problem.
That's right. So I think it has to be Kasmishit is the original.
And the order also will be
Why-
That's, in fact, that's.
Why would one change it to this? If it is grammatically correct, rather grammatically, a particular reading is grammatically not correct, and there is a tendency to replace it by grammatical more logical. And in that case, mostly people, scholars think that the original ungrammatical or illogical was the original lecture.
Yeah.
And in that case, we can say this, but if this is just a
Yeah, no, this one doesn't seem to be a good case of that. It seems to be just that scribes and
there has to be some reason. I mean,
Ah.
if we just scribe and from Kasmir's we say
See,
Kasmir's
somewhere in these manuscripts, 1B, C, and in these are these up here. The grame has been dropped in all of these. So it's just Kasyachit Vipragrihe,
Yeah. I mean,
which is a vernacular sound, right?
which is vernacular, isn't it? Which is quite logical. I mean,
Ah.
logical, vernacular logic, not classical Sanskrit logic. So Kasmir's Vipragrihe is all like Devadatta said,
Yes.
similar.
Right.
So most
Because
probably-
you've lost the grame. If you still have the grame, then it forces the Kasmich. So what would be the argument is that 1B, C, and D, and perhaps E, yeah, all of these had a common ancestor which dropped the grame. And so then the Kasmich became a difficult reading for them to keep. Right, so they all dropped the Kasmich.
No, but if it is Kasmir's because everything is perfect all right, right?
Yeah.
Matching with some
I would
case
rather,
for me.
I would rather say that Kasmir's Vipragrihe was the original, and then
It was
Grame
corrected.
was inserted, then Kasmir's was also changed to Kasmir's.
Corrected.
That's also possible. But
One
unless
E
we
has the- one E
evaluate the
has-
manuscripts, the value.
This is the situation. 1E, these manuscript, or this one manuscript SPL has Kasyachit Brahmanasya.
That's what you can do is while editing, you may try to give some your own this thing,
That's
put in that emendation or
Yeah.
something, if it demands.
yeah. So let me show you then what this can ultimately end up as, which is another viewer that Charles has been working on. A couple of viewers. The which one is it? One is this demo, which I think should work with our CSV file. Which one? Edition 44. This may or may not work because we haven't aligned with the file. But so the idea is that it would, so this would be a reconstructed reading, and from the reconstructed reading, I want to see what all the variants are underneath. Let me expand so you can see. Right, so it would, when you open the file, it just looks like this. You have sentences one after another, and if you click on each word or each sentence, it'll show you the sentence in each manuscript, right? And which ones are variants from the top. Right. And
can I suggest something to you? Maybe it's a big topic. What you can do is, because you have already done so much, here, why don't you just take this up and give it to Gerard Guet's engine? Okay, it should also give you morphological analysis and parse analysis, and it is linked with Ambadulkari's system. And
the big problem with working with Hewitt system is that it's written in this camel.
No, but you can just copy paste the sentences, right? You put. What I'm trying to say is using that kind of information to make this system intelligent.
Yeah, no, I had an
more
idea.
intelligent.
Yeah, I wanted to try something like that.
Because in case of some variations, the parser will automatically fail. The mock analysis won't be obviously available. And that might add some clue, the system can.
I agree. No, I agree. My Sarathis were doing all of this stuff, and they decided that we can't talk with the camel Bhasha that Hewitt is programming. It's some open camel Bhasha. We tried. Some things can be linked, like you can look up words in the this the Vibhakti engine and so on.
Yeah.
That's easy to do. Some of that other stuff is.
Even the parser, Hyderabad side, that could be.
I think it's just harder to link other languages to the programming language. So this is one type of view. Now, ultimately, if one does come to, sorry.
We used to see that there when it comes to phylogenetics, it's very much necessary.
Yeah.
Concordances used to be used when sense disambiguation was performed not very automatically. Right now it's people who work at doesn't really do it. But concordances were used to be used.
Yeah, and ultimately, so I think the other thing one can do, I feel like we can jump into. Yeah, so the way that this is laid out is that, let's say, right now this is Bori 154 it's reading, but I want to start with a different reading. I want to start with SBPK. So it pulls that up and realigns everything else based on that text. The last thing I wanted to show you is the
yeah, but I wanted to ask one more question about the PAUP and all that. And that is more technical in the sense that PAUP is a separately developed program, right? How did you link it with your system?
It's not linked. I'm running PAUP.
You run it on the data you create.
Yeah. We're just creating that NEX file, and then we're feeding it into the reading. So it's not. There are ways to link it, but it's so much work, I think, that it's not worth it so much. So Charles in Vancouver has just created this this morning. This is a viewer that he himself had invented for processing the manuscripts of Hela Raja. And it's a thesis that he's not published, but it's completed with Vincenzo Vecchia at Cambridge. And when I saw him present this, that's when I said, okay, I'm going to hire this fellow to come and do this for us, because he's brilliant.
Yeah, Charles Lee's
amazing. Yeah. So he's done that other visualization as well, and the viewer that I showed earlier. But this is, so I asked him, hey, look, just can you start using your viewer to view our manuscripts? And So this is the first try. I don't know. He also doesn't know how successful it is. But let's see. So
What is this?
this is his auto-critical editor that he's developed.
Of this text, your text.
Yeah. So I don't know if you may not have. It may just only be a layout. Other witnesses. Okay. So if you, right now it's taking just one manuscript, which is I think Eula D, our favorite Eula D. And now let's say we want to add 2 other witnesses now to our edition. Generate apparatus. Right. Now let's see if this works. Oh, that's the Eula D, isn't it? So this is the base reading with Eula D, right? And now, he has Sri Ganeshaya Namaha. In B, right, which would be our other witness, Bori 154, we have an additional Avighnamasti.
Oh, that's what you're saying, the right hand side.
That's right.
In the apparatus.
Yeah. See as Sri Radhe Namami Aharnisha. Right. This is instead of having critical apparatus in the footnotes, he has it over here. I believe there's a way to also then, it shows you where things have been added on the.
Can you just zoom in a bit?
Yeah. So here, let's say you're looking at, you want to know, so everything else is a positive reading, but here you have Prarabdha Vigna Vihita, right, in the third pada here. But in B, which is 4A154, you have Prarabdha Vigna Vihata instead of Vihita. Right. And so it shows you exactly where things are being changed. Right. So in terms of your eye-skipping problem, right, this should help.
This is more useful.
Yeah.
Yes.
Quite well. I have seen some kind of edition like this.
Yeah.
Is it possible that when, like there is a variant for Prarabdha Vigna Vihata, it is not visible, but when you have cursor there, then you can see that.
Yeah.
So that
Exactly.
your view is not distracted, just you read this. Whenever you like, you want to find some variant.
Hiding these, even this apparatus is hidden.
Hiding.
That's not a bad idea. Yeah. Here I find it's fairly hidden even now because it's on the right side. It may not be working so
In
much.
case of used variations, this will be a problem. Right now it's all simple and 1 or 2 variants recorded. What do you do when you have that case where a big chunk?
But then you can very well put it at the end.
But I don't think one needs to. Yeah. Well, I would say that if you're getting in a situation where you have huge chunks, it's maybe not a critical addition.
It's not a critical addition. Secondly, most of them, they are just scribal errors which you can ignore. Like people mix variants and scribal errors.
So here's a fairly long addition that's happened in 154. Mahashmashane of Ashwina Krishna Chaturdashyam Aghora Mantre Sadhite Sati. That's all have been added before just Ashtav Mahasiddhi.
This is still very good.
And I think there's a way to jump into, if you click on the sigla, it jumps to that text with the others, then, well, not automatically, but now you can have the others become the witnesses. So that's the ultimate goal, is to have all these tools now start. Yeah. That's where one can go.
And the name is also very good, Sattu.
That's the child's, that's website, Prashna? Otherwise, we can continue in more text. I mean, the basic, all of this can only happen if text is put in with the proper tags and so on.
Yeah.
Everything, all of these things are working with the tags. If you don't have the tags, then you don't have the right typing scheme and so on.
Also from the variants, is it possible to go back to the text? I mean, this is, the text file is already available where you are going, right? But an exercise of, having a text and variants and getting those variants and going back.
So,
The kind of reverse.
You have the critical apparatus and you have sort of, let's say a critical addition. Then just use the apparatus and the critical addition to reverse it for all the nodes, produce all the files.
you would have to hope that the critical editor is making note of every single divergence.
Add, repeat.
And that's almost never the case. Minor errors, they almost never.
You can't even go back exactly back.
If it's an addition done by cutting price index, then yes. You can do that. Because the way they work in Vienna, every single minor, virama that's there, everything is everything is.
Yeah.
But they also have a positive apparatus as well as a negative apparatus.
Do you have positive apparatus?
I think there's a way to do it, but this one is only right now just comparing the three. There isn't a critical. So. Yeah, I think there's. Yeah, I think it can create sigla and so on. Yeah. But the main point I'm hoping to do is to make sure that it's still readable. Critical edition often is not easy to read, but here it's at least that the way I envision it. Even if you have these on the side, you have these divergences. You can quickly just see, okay, why is this? Where is this different? Well, let me. But you should be able to, it should show you where that now it's linked, because then you can just quickly read, okay, Nichehi prarabdha vigna hita. Instead of having to almost have to calculate in your own mind what would be the correct reading of that magazine. And you can jump into that magazine just by clicking on the name. Yeah, no, I just ideally if we had done our own finished story 21, we could have put it into this and seen the whole process. We can continue. It's up to you what you want to do at this point. If you have ideas, I'm happy to help in any. If you want to learn more of the tagging and if there's any questions and so on.
All the options.
Yeah.